Nursing school does not have to be this scary, daunting thing that you don't think you can succeed at. You just have to have the right tools and the right way of studying that works for you. I'm Liliana, and I started nursing school 5 years ago this August. And yes, that does mean I started nursing school in the middle of the pandemic, which looking back was crazy. Tina Jones and I were like BFFs, if you know, you know. But when I was preparing for nursing school and watching videos like this, I felt like all of the big, scary, daunting David versus Goliath mentality about nursing school really had me completely scared. I thought I would have no friends, no life, and would be barely scraping by. I'm not gonna lie, the first semester was rough, but it was because I hadn't figured out how to study yet in a way that worked for me. Once I figured these techniques out, I was able to graduate summa cum laude of my nursing class. I got a practicum in the NICU, which ultimately ended up with me working there, and I've worked there ever since. And although I did not get a 4.0 in nursing school, I did get 1B in health assessment my first semester. I truly believe that it was because I had not implemented these techniques yet. I want you to learn from my mistakes so that you can absolutely thrive and still have really good school-life balance outside of nursing school and get good grades. So if you are looking at a different way to plan and think about your semester or different ways to study for classes, definitely keep watching. I have timestamps linked in the description so that you can jump to whatever place you feel like you are struggling the most. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing I would do is during syllabus week, I would make an overall calendar of the semester, color-coded with each class so that I could get a bird's eye view of what was happening each week of the semester. These would be the big exam dates, big essays, and assignments that were due. I'm gonna put an example on the screen, but I am a super visual person, so if you are too, this will probably work really well for you. It helped me see at a glance where I am in the semester, what I have coming up, and what I need to be planning for now. Having all of this information laid out at the beginning of the semester helped me feel so much less overwhelmed and helped me come up with a concrete plan going into every week. And then going off of that, my second biggest tip is going to be to pick a priority every single week. There was one semester in nursing school where I legit had 1 to 2 exams every single week. And although it's great to be studying little by little for each class as the semester goes on, when you have an exam every single week, it is just really hard to make that happen. If you're watching this video, you are probably used to being a good student and are a perfectionist. You're going to have to let that go and focus on one class every single week that is going to be your priority. That doesn't mean that you can't study at all or do anything for any other class, but it just means that you are going to pick what your focus is of the week. Similar to the syllabus planning page that I would use, I also had a sheet that I would kind of fill out for each week. So I'll put an example of that here. But having an outline for the week with a priority helped me stay so much more on track. Okay, so now we are going to get into what I would actually do for each class. And this study method was the same whether I was taking an adult class, families, pharmacology, patho. This formula worked for every single one of my classes. So before each class, I would download the PowerPoint slides that my professor was going to be lecturing on the day before, and I would download them into a PDF and put them onto GoodNotes on my iPad. I was an iPad girly in college, and it was so helpful to me as somebody who didn't want to be carrying a lot of papers around, but also really liked to hand write on things to remember it. But if you don't have an iPad or a tablet that is similar, you could also just print out the PowerPoint sheets and have them ready to go for class. So I would have that ready to go, and during the lecture, I would annotate on the PowerPoint slides. As the professor was talking on each slide, I would be writing what they were saying, any key things they were pointing out, highlighting directly on the PowerPoint slides. This was so helpful because it didn't feel like I was just rushing to write down everything that was on the slide. I was able to actively listen and take note of what they were emphasizing aside from what was just written on the slide. And then during class, I would also record the lecture on my phone. I personally just use my voice memos, but I know there are some apps that let you sync what you're writing on the page on your iPad with what is being lectured in the audio. So if you think that might be helpful, you could definitely look into some apps for that. But personally, I just like to keep it simple and use my voice notes. So then after class, or whenever my next study time set aside for this class was, I would go through the whole lecture again, and this is when I would write out my notes into like a 1 to 2 page little study guide cheat sheet of what was most important from the lecture. This meant that I was listening to the lecture twice, I was writing the lecture twice, and at the end of it, I got a little 1 to 2 page cheat sheet that I could quickly look at when I needed to study the day before the day of the exam. Obviously, you don't want to cram in nursing school, but having a little sheet that you can glance at with your most important information when you have an exam every single week is going to be helpful just to refresh you on what's most important. And then the last thing I would do is I would make a Quizlet of each lecture. I loved Quizlet in college. I think now you have to pay for it, which to me is crazy, but Quizlet was such a lifesaver for me in nursing school. So I would try to do a combination of really basic flashcards, literally just saying exactly what's on the screen and what's the answer, but also try to come up with more exam style questions of what I thought the professor would ask based on what was important about this lecture. And then instead of just doing flashcards, I would go to learn mode, which learn mode, if I remember correctly, has you do a combination of flashcards, having you type in the answer, and multiple choice. This really allowed me to get into not only recognize the material, but also do that active recall, which is ultimately going to make those connections in your brain stronger. And what was really great about this is once my best friend in nursing school and I figured out that we both liked using Quizlet to study, we were able to tag team making Quizlets for lectures. So for example, if there were 4 lectures that were going to be on an exam, she would do lectures 1 and 3, and I would do lectures 2 and 4. And then we would just share them with each other, and that way we were doing less of that passive work, which was actually like typing in and making the Quizlet, and getting to spend more of that active time studying. So if you have a bestie in nursing school that you think would also benefit from using flashcard style, definitely see if they would want to partner up and you guys could divide and conquer on these lectures. And what I really liked about using Quizlet was that I could fit it in throughout my day to where I wasn't spending all of my time just sitting there studying. I could habit stack and do Quizlet while I was walking on the treadmill or doing Stairmaster to hit my fitness goals. I could do my Quizlet on the way to my boyfriend driving me to a date, or while I was in the waiting room for 10 to 15 minutes waiting for a doctor's appointment. I could really still fit studying into my life, but not in a way where I was just sitting there in front of a textbook for hours and hours. Which honestly, I hardly even touched my textbooks in nursing school. I know that's probably a bad thing for nursing professors to hear, but this is really just what worked for me. So that's the nitty gritty of exactly my formula for how I would break down studying for each lecture. And then again, I would go back to that priority of the week and figure out what was most important for me, for the Quizlets I needed to be reviewing, for the lectures I needed to be re-listening to. So my last tip for succeeding in nursing school is kind of counterintuitive. It is going to be to take one day completely off from nursing school a week. I know you are probably so overwhelmed and feeling stressed out and like there's not enough time to do everything. You're thinking, how can I possibly take one day off from nursing school? I'm telling you, starting with nursing school, nursing will just take and take and take from you as a person. You have to know that you exist outside of nursing school, outside of nursing, and pursue your hobbies and what is most important to you. You feeling rested, recharged, re-energized is going to have so much more of an impact on your grades than cramming an extra 3 to 4 hours of studying. I hope these study tips helped you out, helped give you some inspo for the new semester. If you're going to try any out, definitely let me know. Let me know if this was helpful, and I'll see you guys next time.